Sup Buttercups, welcome to our generational chats. This is a conversation we've been wanting to have, realizing that the generations have so much to teach each other, so much to talk about. And my mom and I have been able to have open dialogue. So these generational chats will be topic by topic. And what's relevant right now? Activism, protests, demonstrations, amongst a pandemic on top of all of that. But I think first, those of you who don't know my mom, this is Jocelyn. What's the name? Say hi, Mom.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, this is my rock, my buddy. We might be 41 years apart, 40 years apart, but we share a lot. But it did come with a lot of hard work and a lot of honest conversations. But before we begin, I want to pay honor to the lives that have been lost during lockdown through actually the police that have been really overly aggressive and unfair to a lot of people in poorer communities. And I want to mention these people by names. Colin Kosa, severely assaulted by SANDF and JMPD officers, including being hit with the butt of a machine gun, throttled while his arm was held behind his back and slammed into a steel gate. Petrus Michels, one officer hit his knuckles with a hammer. A second police officer grabbed Michels, dragged him toward their vehicle and forced him into the front seat and drove away. It is not clear what happened in the vehicle, but a short while later, Michels was dropped off near where he had been picked up, from where he walked to his house on Carnated Road. He died on the stoop within an hour. Aidan Emmanuel. The police accused Emmanuel of selling cigarettes, a claim he denied. This led to the officers brutally assaulting him. A severely wounded Emmanuel was then arrested and kept in police custody for about 2 hours before he was released on bail. The police then drove him to a clinic where he died. Sibusiso Amos, fatally shot on the veranda of his home. So I wanted to mention the names because I think it's beautiful that we can stand with our brothers that are not all the violence that's happening in America, but there's also a lot happening here in South Africa. And there are names that aren't being mentioned. There's this artist who made these little posts, but there's a lot that has to be named. So we need to keep the conversation going, and having conversations is what we want to start just to do. So this is going to be a bit of a dialogue. And shall I tell them your background and how old you are and things like that? Shall I do that for you? Yeah. So my mom, like I said, she's a baby boomer, born in 1947. My mom is actually 72 years old. Look at this. Great genes. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to age well. Thank you, Lord. And I was born in 1987. So my mom was, apartheid officially started to be introduced in South Africa in 1948. So that's literally 1 year after my mother was born. And apparently on paper, it was supposed to encourage cultural freedom and just to encourage the different races to give them space to practice their cultural topics. Let me just double check something over here. There we go. Okay, anyway. So, of course, in practice, it was not implemented that way. Am I right? It was totally different. It ended up limiting a lot of very specific races and increased white superiority. That was the ideology. And it was happening during a time when the world was actually moving away from racist laws, practices. I mean, of course, we know it takes a while to work out. And we can see that there's still a lot of remnants of it and a lot of anger and a lot of process still needs to happen. But that's what my mom was born into, was an activist through, participated in it, and now at 72 is still living in post-apartheid, or what we would like to have called the Rainbow Nation. So, Mom, would you share with people who are watching and who will watch this, what is your memories of apartheid? Some of them that you'd like to share.
I can really say that in the area where I grew up, that's dating way back to the, what years that was, 70s, 60s, when I remember people were separated, but we didn't understand the separation. But the clear thing to me is about that a road was made in our area that stretched from way back, say Strandfontein area, right down past the Athlone police station. And that road was named after one of the architects of apartheid, Jan Smuts. That road wasn't there when I was raised in Crawford. It was implemented around about the early 60s or mid 60s, Jan Smuts.
Yeah, and just give you context, like this road I was mentioning, Jan Smuts actually runs almost all the way through Cape Town, like from the furthest area, which is we sometimes consider as Mitchell's Plain. It goes further down, the name changes, but then it connects and goes straight through into the CBD, to the foreshore, to the pretty part of Cape Town.
Yeah.
Continue.
So, and the other memory that I have of apartheid would now be when I was schooling, also around about the 60s, 64, 65. I was schooling at my last 2 years at the Oakland High. We saw the benches on the station being marked blankes,
Whites.
kleerling,
Coloreds.
yes. So it was marked. So more people were standing on the station than sitting because they were not allowed to sit on a particular bench.
Seats,
Yeah. And nobody ever sat on those benches, but because people wouldn't sit on it because of the color that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a brown, a colored person and the bench is marked white, you sure would be pulled from the bench if you go and sit down on that bench. So that is a station that I will never forget, Crawford Station, because we had to cross that. My mom went to work, and she had to stand on that station till the train comes. We crossed that station area, over the station to the back of Crawford Station to walk to Lansdowne where Oakland's High was. So that is also a clear mark in my memory. Then my next memory of apartheid was when the people moved away from us as neighbors. It was a white family. The man was he worked at a fire station, so he was a fire master or whatever. They had 2 children, and for years they lived next to us until that particular time. I can't remember the year, but then they moved away. They didn't live next door to us anymore. Then we noticed people that used to live in certain homes or certain streets moving away. There was also a so-called black family, very affluent family. The mom was a nursing sister. The children were graduates somewhere, or they were past high school years. They were prominent families. I still visualize them.
Yes.
They also moved away from the area. So we noticed the changes by families moving away from the present colored community we lived in. Then there was another phase in my life that I remember
Can I ask, sorry, did you keep in contact with those families that moved away?
We didn't know where they were moving to. They moved away quietly because probably they were personally told to move. We don't know, and there was never a sign like you would know somebody's going to move when a notice of for sale is on their home. Then there was the buses story. I think it's a hard thing to talk about the bus story. The seating in the buses, you couldn't sit downstairs because certain races was privileged to sit downstairs. We had to go and climb upstairs if we could afford to take the bus.
And that was double-decker buses.
Double-decker bus in those years. Then my other memory about apartheid, this is now before I finished schooling. When we were in primary and high school, it wasn't, we didn't make a big issue out of, we just noticed the changes. But when I finished schooling and had to start my nursing career, that was formed another part of my awareness of something is very strange. The hospital was only for so-called colored families and black families, like when they said Bantu families. That time the connotation was strange. Colored, Bantu, Indian, those kind of connotations were attached to the different races.
Those who are not familiar with South African history, Bantu basically refer to all black people, whatever tribe they were from. If they were black, considered black, and also we'll talk about measurements, all that type of thing a little later on.
Yeah, so
colored, Indian, Bantu.
So that was the hospital. That was my training time. So now it came to the time when I was qualified and had to see the extreme changes that happened at the hospital I was working at for about 24 years. That in the beginning of those years, in the early 70s, it was, to me, it was extreme because before I even thought there's something wrong, I realized that I, as a qualified nurse in charge of a department, outpatient department, was not allowed to handle a white child, not even the folder of the white child.
And even if they were very ill, you couldn't touch.
I couldn't touch them. I couldn't take their temperature. I couldn't. That was my rude awakening. Something terribly is going on in this situation. A hospital governed by apartheid. And then the other extreme thing that I want to mention is that not only were we made aware you can't help the child, we noticed the difference in the folder. The colors of the folders was allocated. A green folder could have been for the colored, a white folder was for the white, and then there was another color folder for all the different races had different color folders.
So that all the nurses would know what the race the child is or patient is. Wow.
And we were not even allowed to speak to the parents of the sick child. So it's very intimidating when you come to realize you have studied in a direction that you're not allowed to practice.
It's like you're trying to study into a direction where you want to help all children or all patients, but you're actually told you can only help specific.
Because we made you make the nurse's oath that you will help and care for all people. But that, it was a sad part for me, and it caused me to rebel. I was very rebellious when I realized this is not going to go on.
Okay, so then I think we want to definitely go into how you practice activism. like I mentioned before, I think it looked very different back in the day. There was mainly just demonstrations and placards and different forms of demonstration. And now it's morphed into a lot of social media campaigns, a lot of online ways of communicating, and that has its pros and its cons. I think, you know, when a lot of the Arab states were overthrown, could actually only happen because it was a global network that supported everything. So there's pros and there's cons. Just to share because I think I was like 1 or 2 or much younger during that time. I was born 9 years, 7 years before apartheid actually ended. So when I was younger, because I was so young, I would stay with my grandmother. My grandmother lived with us in our home. I have 2 older brothers. And so my brothers are 9 years and 12 years older. So they were old enough almost to go with my mom to demonstrations and marches. So that's actually all I know about apartheid, is that it did happen, and how my father, my mother, my brothers participated in it. And my grandmother was my caretaker. She would stay home with me and make sure that I'm fine. That's my mom's mom, Sidonia Felix. Oma, grandma, for those who don't know that word. So, and then my mom would tell me about the marches, about Purple Rain. That's how they would make sure they can identify people who are running away and know who to arrest as well. And of course, there would be gas and rubber bullets, all that type of thing. So, Mom, I want to ask you, how did you participate in the protests, and how did you practice as an activist around that time? Did people who you sort of like taught how, or did you like imitate and follow, or like?
Yeah, we attended most of the meetings that was held in our area or away from our area, in the civic centers where it was guarded. People will be on duty at the door and be the lookouters. They would look out for police, even if the police was dressed in casual clothes or uniforms.
Yes.
Or look out if there's a police van coming on. So the meetings were very guarded, protected. Either the
They were illegal, right?
Yeah, it was illegal to gather. And there was a time when if there's a protest happening somewhere else, a whole group of us would go and protest. Like I remember we went to protest when Cheryl Carolus was imprisoned in another area. We would go and make a big noise and go and shout or go and sing outside. And the fact that they were aware where we're going to, so you have to report where you are going to as a group so that they would know your whereabouts.
Reporting to who you're...
The civic, the women's group we belong to, and
okay, almost as a safety precaution.
Safety precaution, so that they know where we are. You don't act on your own steam. So
it was always organized.
Report back, organizing, and many a time we had to go and speak about what our grievances are, that we were not allowed to do this, or not allowed to go here, or not allowed to be in a certain place. There were many times when I, in my lunchtime, used to go and join
I remember the stories, yes.
A protest march, or whether I had a uniform on or not. I was so determined to see the change that I can make, or the contribution that I can bring about, or bring to the situation.
To lend your voice, your body, put your body on the line.
Show our disapproval of the system that is controlling, and the police that would be in a van that is not marked a police van, it's a truck. Those were we had to look out for what we see inside. If there was a window and we could see it's a police in an ordinary truck, a truck that supposed to load bread or download furniture or a plain van, they would be hidden in there and would be shooting out of there. So that is how my memory still holds the Thornton Road incident of the 3 guys that was killed in Thornton Road.
Yes.
The was what's that thing called?
I'm as terrible as remembering history details as anyone can get.
Yeah. And the name is on that on the plaque in Thornton Road.
In memorial, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you shoot from a ordinary van or car, you were labeled that. So those are the injustices that I've seen, not on one occasion, on many occasions. And the other part of the apartheid system, when I had the realization that there are now many strange, unknown people that had to be housed, and you can't even think of closing your door, not allowing them to come into your home. We had to hide people in your home.
Yes.
You had to feed them until they are fetched again and moved to another place. So,
and would you be told who they are?
We would never know what their names are.
Was that to protect you and them?
To protect both parties.
Okay.
And those are the times that I would think it was important for me to bring my contribution to protect these children that's far away from their parent homes, so that they can be safe, although we never knew if they were alive. When their names are mentioned, we wouldn't know it's them. So I was just aware that I must do my part, because this is an unfair system that we're living under, and nobody can stand aloof and say they want to be part of it.
Yeah.
So protection and the safety of other people was important.
I think it just reminds me of, in school, we would not always be told about the really dark details of apartheid. There was actually, if I realize now as an adult, having to do my own research and reading, you find out how, people were sent, there were pipe bombs in people's cars, people would disappear, they would kidnap people, they would implant people into different communities to spy and to talk about who the leaders are, who is actually supporting certain systems, and then they would target those people and weaken the system, weaken the communities. So like when my mom was speaking about how organized, and they would report and say, okay, this is what we're going, this is where we'll be, this is who all that's going there, it's because of that. Because sometimes you would be risking your safety, and if we don't know that if they didn't know that you were going out, if you disappear,
nobody would know.
Exactly. Yes. And my mom would often tell me stories, because her and my dad had the same passion, and he was also very political. One of the stories that I remember her telling me was of, they would, as a group of men, because they were all academics, my father studied became into pharmaceuticals, and later owned his own pharmacy. And he would often have a lot of like-minded people, and they would be reading the same literature. But if there were raids, or if people were suspected of having communist and socialist literature, yes, then they would be prosecuted. So at the back of our home in Surrey Estate, they were actually buried underneath. We had an apple tree, and my father would, and him and his people probably help him, right? And then dig a hole and hide all the books, because if you were found with those books,
imprisonment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that for me is an indicator that knowledge back then was power, knowledge today is power, knowledge is always power. And why I feel like, yes, some of the education about the system happened in school, but also a lot of it, you realize, happened for me after school. There was one poem I remember reading where it would speak about this person, how they died in prison. The one, it would start something like, oh, He was in the cell, he showered, he slipped, he hit his head, and then it would break down and start not making sense. It's almost like he hit his head, he showered, he died. Like it would be some illogical account. And that was so common. And because the Caucasians or the whites in the community thought a little of Black life, it was very easy for them to quieten a lot of these stories. So for me, I think my first memories of activism is going on marches with people. I think particularly when it was about AIDS and HIV, because that was also another big topic in our community. I think when I was in primary school, there were talks about, this is going to destroy generations and that grandparents will look after their grandchildren. So there was a lot of marches around then, and then also gangsterism and violence, because when you just move from one hostile state, from apartheid to Rainbow Nation, and it's not resolved, the Trust and Reconciliation Committee. Truth and Reconciliation Committee. I have a lot to learn. I need to re-educate myself. They, I think, help try and make peace, right, Mom? You follow some of that as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's still such a lot of anger and a lot of violence in the communities, because it wasn't like resolved. Yeah. Like the white people didn't give back the homes that they pushed their communities out of. They kept them. They kept they kept staying in the nice areas, and there would still be a lot of preferential treatment to whites, even though they might not feel that way. People of color know that. I think I wanted to move on to the next, so just have to post it so I don't go on a ramble, yeah. I wanted to ask, were you warned about the risks of activism? How real were those risks to you? Did someone tell you, okay, look, this may happen or this may happen, or was it always just something you heard of?
I can only speak about when I was working as a nursing sister.
Yes.
That when I, in my lunchtime, think it's enough time to go on a march or a protest march or whatever it is, I would get back in time. That I had no reason to fear, because it's my lunchtime that I was using. So if I had gone out in the time allocated to be on duty, I knew some drastic measures would be taken against me. But that didn't
tell you as much.
Yeah.
You're like,
I was just determined to do this thing, because I was just aware that there's something being done about the injustices. So I want to be part of that
the movement
to clear all this. So it's not that I was afraid. I was never afraid. I really want to bring this thing about, that I had an attitude being a member of the ANC. Then I was an activist by heart, to the point that I would wear that ANC badge, and that brought me many times to the matron's office. She would always tell me that is not part of your uniform. Why do you insist on wearing it? So I said, this is who I am. I'm an activist. I am standing up for the downtrodden. I'm standing up for those that hasn't got a voice. So you cannot remove. So I think that's the boldest I've ever been towards a white woman who was the matron in the hospital at the time. So the fear has not been dampened by a threat, not at all.
Oh, you mean it wasn't in? You didn't give it life. You didn't give the fear life. Yeah, amazing. But now, okay, so if I had to answer that question about this, I think because I grew up more in the post-apartheid era, and there were marches, it was more the stigma of, oh, you need to march, like are you still underprivileged? Like, do you not have enough? Do you not, like, oh, shame, are you still poor? Or like, don't you think that, the government has done enough for you? Like, it was that type of attitude, I feel, like, underlying. And as well, there would still be a stigma as to where you lived. So, you'd want to live in a nice area, but a lot of us were still growing up in the areas where we were born. And for me, that was an area called Sari Estate, which is what we term the Cape Flats. Of course, Cape Town was divided demographically, So the tourist parts that you see, that's the white areas a lot of the time. And then they go to the very poverty-stricken, the black areas a lot of the time as well, which is Khayelitsha and Gugulethu and Langa as well. I think that the main risk was stigma. You didn't want to feel out, you didn't want to feel poor, or you didn't want to feel like you were in lack, because from you, the only direct way you hear about everything that happened in apartheid was reported a lot of the time, and there was a big emphasis on them wanting us to focus on, you are the next generation, you are going to bring the new, so much so that I think they were trying to make us forget what had happened. Yeah. And for me, I think that's actually very telling. Yeah. I wanted to just check with you, yes, there were risks to you. How real were they? I mean, it sounds like you may not have been threatened in the ways that other people were, but was it things that you heard about, like people in your circles, that you heard, you could disappear or you could be imprisoned?
Yes,
like,
because of the people that we were sheltering. So there was a time when a vehicle was parked on the same spot all day, and you can't see if there's somebody in it. So it was close to, just on the opposite side of the road. So when people are brought to our house, they can see. It's not, it doesn't necessarily have to be dark. It could have just been towards sunset or early hours of the morning. People were brought there just for a day or two, or just a few hours, until a next plan has been worked out for them, so that they are taken to another area where it could be safer, because that was too close to the main road to target somebody that is in hiding in somebody's house.
Yeah.
So they marked the house where droppings would happen. So I didn't have the fear of our house is being watched. We knew our house was being watched, but for what reason would we be afraid? We weren't dealing with drugs or dealing with underhandedness. For the state, that was underhanded, to be putting up people that doesn't belong in our family, or to be hiding somebody that doesn't necessarily are related to us. So that was underhanded to the state or to the police force. They have never on one occasion came and raid or come and knock on the door and ask who lives there. We never had that type of experience, although many others had that experience. They shared that experiences with us, that the police came in there and took out the people that they were hiding. So
it never happened in our home.
Never happened in our home.
Okay.
And that was before my lovely.
What? Just to remind me as well. But would you share, like, what was my father passed when I was 1 year old, so that was in 1948. 1988. I just walked 2 years. I'm 72. I just like 72. So my dad was 1 year younger than my mom. So my dad was actually born in 1948. So would you share what Dad's part, like he was very community minded, but I'll let my mom talk about him. James Daniel Matsmana, my dad. Yeah.
So he, as a second functional part of his life, his main one was to be a pharmacist, and his business was in Holt Road, Elsies River. But the other part of his practical life was the community work. He would do all sorts of community activism, hold meetings, and be part of the transport system, or policing the area, or doing unification work, bringing people together to hold meetings, or transport people to go to another area to have a meeting and liaise with the authorities. And I giggle when I think of this word that he couldn't say, apartheid. He used to say apartheid. Because
apartheid.
Yeah, he couldn't say that word. I think it's a PE thing. He comes from Port Elizabeth. Yeah. So, make me go. So there were times when he would, even to the point of he would cook for people, for where people didn't have food. I would just note the big pot is gone out of the cupboard. He would do the food. He would cook the food and take it to where the need is, so that I am free to take care of the children. He didn't shirk from anything. Nothing was too much for him, whether it's cooking or driving or
doing his part.
Whatever part he felt he needed to do is to protect the community, to educate. And many a times I wasn't aware where he was, but I just know he went out that front door to go and do what he felt was his duty for the community.
So would you say he was part of like the leadership in the
community? Yes, he was the chairperson of the Civic Association at the time of his death. Many memories about that.
Okay. So that was okay. So he was this. So who did the civic leader report to? Who was he accountable to?
The organization, it's the ANC.
Okay.
Yeah, the ANC allocated communities to have a civic association so that they report back to.
And how broad is that civic leadership that he held place for? Because you said he was the chairperson of the civic area. How broad is that?
Well, this is the whole of Surrey Estate is it's a civic association for Surrey
Estate.
Each area had,
Okay. All right.
And many a time the Menenberg Civic Association would come and join the Surrey Estate Civic Association and have joint meetings.
Yeah.
There are many of those people that still, if they are still around, who remember my husband. Because he didn't shirk. His responsibility never had a definite cut-off area of work. He would go beyond just Surrey Estate. He would work in other areas where there are trouble and strife. So
it's amazing. I think as I speak to my mom about like activism and she shares things with me, I realize, it's inherent in me because I also love to build projects around helping people. And I've also been recently also having to build up myself, because if you want to give, sometimes you have to do a lot of self-work. So my passion is mental health and also food. I would say I'm a food activist. I think people should know more about their food to be more aware of the politics around food, and to be able to heal themselves through food. Because everybody has access to food, but not everybody has access to healthcare. So let me just check. To be cute, I'm not wearing my glasses, guys, but we are on 12%. So I just have to be mindful of that. When it gets to like 6, just tell me. My mom's my eyes. Otherwise, I'm gonna be doing this, guys. Okay. Anyway, but we just have one last question, and then we're going to be closing out a little. So that is my passion. And when I realized, and I speak to my mom, as you know, was a nurse, and she still was very focused on talking to people about health, and she does Shazin, and that also is a lot of natural components in their products and can be used to support the body in different ways. Yes, to support good circulation, healthy skin, so that, you know, to have a broader awareness. And so because I've been through my own mental health struggles, I found ways of healing myself, and I want to share those things with other people. And what I realized is when I speak to her about my dad, he was thinking of broader ways of helping. Yes, he had a pharmacy. Yes, he wanted to build his business, but he was always thinking about how can we take this to another level. Yes, to another level, and working with people, you know. And I think that is the important thing, is we educate ourselves, and then we organize, and then we push the agenda forward. And I hope that's something that we as South Africans do, not just protest and talk and talk and talk and then go back to our lives, because I feel almost like we've also almost forgotten about the women's issues we had, you know. And through the pandemic, that has come up again. There's more domestic violence because everybody is shut in. So last question is, you know, now that you've been living in a post-apartheid South Africa, was it what you hoped for? Were there things, you know, that you wish had changed? What's your opinion on post-apartheid?
There's still much to do. There's still poverty, there's still crime, there's still lots of injustices and inequalities. So we cannot just sit back. We must constantly be looking out for how can I, not what can they do, what can I do? How do I contribute to the change? I must be, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So I need to be seeing what change I can bring about in where I am with what I have.
Amazing. Yeah, I think when, you know, they in high school, of course, now they talk about apartheid, and then they talk about, you know, what they want to look like, or they make promises, you know. And someone living in that post-apartheid world, there's a lot of promises that have not been kept. Even through this pandemic, so I've worked in white areas where I'm talking about CBD, and the reaction time with police is so much faster. There's more security, and there's better maintenance, all of those things. So there's still a lot of disparities, and I think people have gotten so tired of fighting that there's been a lot of like relaxing. And I think we need to remember that there's generations that are coming, and what will they say? You know, why didn't you do? Yes, why didn't you fight for us? Why didn't you continue the fight? Why didn't you teach us even how to? So I know the millennials and the Gen Zs are figuring out new ways of pushing the envelope and supporting one another. So yeah, so thank you everybody. To those of you who'll be watching this, I just wanted to also say, you know, do what you can, use your voice, use it well, support those around you. We are all one. Also, hold space for your own healing, for your joy, and continue to nurture your body, your mind, because we need you healthy, we need you strong. South Africa, Africa ahead. we also need to remember there's a lot of people that immigrate. Let's not ignore their plight as well. Let's not just think about Black Lives Matter in USA, but they matter all through Africa. There's still issues that are being ignored. Thank you, Mom, so much for chatting to me. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm grateful that we can have this voice. For a long time, we've been saying we're going to talk about this.
So now this is the beginning. This is a series. So this is one of the first that we're going to be doing. And I'd just like to say, wherever you are, nurture your joy, so that wherever you are in your joy seat. Yes. And automatically you become a joy agent.
We need to feel good about what we're sharing. We know what it is that we're bringing to the table.
So from our home to yours, we send you love, and we ask you to educate yourself, to take care of yourself, take care of your mind, and take care of those around you in your community.
Keep moving.
Yes. Wishing you joy always. Much love.
Thank you.
Bye.